I'd like to bring to order this Mobile GR Commission meeting on June 5th, 2025 at 12 p.m. To any of the members of the public that are present or listening, welcome. Commission provides input on mobility-related activities and programs to department staff and makes recommendations to the City Commission on policies related to the activities. You will have two opportunities where you can provide comments. First opportunity is on, on agenda items. And also at the end of the meeting, you can provide general comments on any items. We're not able to respond to your comments directly, but we are listening and we use your feedback to inform our decisions. So roll call, please.
Lunger,
Here.
Whistling,
Here.
Clark, LeGrand, Wynn,
Here.
Mathis,
Here.
Sessa,
Here.
Patton,
Here.
Weiler,
Here.
Pawala. Oh, I'm sorry. Pawaka.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Very good. I'll go off script a little bit, but we have a new commissioner, so welcome, Mr. Weiler. Don't know if I'll put you on the spot. If you'd like to say a few words about yourself, feel free.
Excited to be here. Thank you. I think the way we move around shapes who we are as a people, so I'm excited to help inform that.
All right, good.
Yep.
So first, we have approval of the minutes from May 1st commission meeting. It was in our packets. Are there any questions or corrections or comments? All right, seeing none.
Motion.
All right,
Second.
all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Next, I will open it up to public comment on agenda items. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to come up to the podium, now is your chance. All right, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Action items. First order of business are the board rule changes.
Thank you. So the board rule changes we're bringing back from a discussion that we had with this commission earlier in the year. Max Gillis is going to come up and walk through the red lines that are in your packet, and we'll open it up to a discussion with the board for any other input. Max?
Thank you very much. We talked about this a few times. Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Max Gillis. So we talked about this a few times in 2024, and then at the January meeting in 2025, we proposed a number of changes to these rules and took some feedback from the board and took that back to our legal team here at the city, as well as internal Mobile GR staff, and came up with these proposed changes to the Mobile GR Commission rules. I'm happy to walk through them one by one. So just to start with the first page here, we see a change. We had a recommendation from the board to change gender-specific language to be more inclusive. So we changed it to the member's successor. And we did this throughout the document. So I'll just mention that once and then skip past it going forward, but we can see that. We also took a recommendation from the board to focus on our shoulds and shalls and got clarity from the legal department on when that would be appropriate. So we did that throughout the document as well. So you can see that on the first page we just saw. And then, we can go to the next one now. And here, just more of that consistent inclusive language, as well as on this page, and then the next page. Another clarification on a shall, we changed this one to may to be, to interpret the language as appropriate as the board saw and our legal team agreed here. And then we can go next. Another change for the shalls to the shoulds. We also did some language cleanup in terms of how we describe the department. So we changed mobile GR and parking services. We don't use that title anymore for the department, so we eliminated the parking services part. There was a small typo on section D3 here we can see where we misspelled the word, so we corrected that. And then here, this just clarified a little bit on this language, this was directly discussed at the January meeting, and we feel that we were able to clarify this section to better reflect the way the board would like this to be worded. So it took direct direction on that. And then down in section E, we did a little bit more cleanup around the language for the department name, as well as being a little more clear on terms of if there is someone who's not the director available. And then did another shall to will, and then more cleanup around the department language name. The next page. So this section, so we have more shalls and we's, or shalls to wills in section G, which I'm happy to clarify on further if there are any questions about that, although it was discussed at the January meeting. And then, so section A here was asked by the board in January to have a strong look at by the legal team, so we went with their direct rewrite on this. It's just a little bit more clarification around what how the meeting schedules should be written. So if there's any questions or comments on that, I'm happy to speak to it. We did do another small typo fix in the middle there on section B, and then another clarification on the new title. Next page, please. So more clarification on the title of the department in section H, and then the original purpose of bringing forward these rule changes was, as seen here in section A, removing one of our public comment periods. This is not by any means an attempt to suppress public comment, simply the reality that our public comment is usually limited, and I think focusing it on one section is something that staff and the board had expressed agreement on, so that's why we're proposing that today. Happy to hear discussion or answer any questions on that. Basically just solidify or combining our two public comment periods into one that can be on all matters. So that's all these changes here in Article 5. And then some more shalls to shoulds in section A. And then next page. And then that is it. So I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments or future requests if the board doesn't feel ready to vote on this, or if there are any changes they'd like to make.
Any questions or comment? I think it looks good. I mean, you cleaned up, so the difference between shall and should. Should means you probably should do it. Shall means you have to do it.
Yes, I am not a lawyer, so I'll just give my understanding of the interpretation. But yes, shall is synonymous, I believe, with a requirement.
Yeah.
And should is a strong recommendation, is my interpretation of it.
All right. If there are no other comments or questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve the changes in our bylaws.
I'll motion to approve the changes in the bylaws.
Second.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next are our Parking Incentive Program Working Group. Jessica, would you like to cue this up?
Sure. So during our April Mobile GR Commission meeting, the commissioners asked that I assemble a list of individuals who were ready and willing to serve on a working group to take a look at the existing 1995 City Commission policy regarding the Parking Incentive Program. The Parking Incentive Program is a process that the Mobile GR Commission has the authority to approve applications for this process. Because it's quite old, we thought that given it is a new time and we have new challenges today in the parking system, and also, ever-changing challenges to our businesses, we wanted to, the commission wanted to establish a working group to take a deeper dive into this policy. So if you all would take a look in your packet, I have a memo there that states this, and then also the things that you all asked me to look for as representatives in the community. That included office space, retail, downtown business owners, a restaurant or soft retail, downtown employee and resident, downtown and then commercial real estate. I also took the liberty of pulling a resource from the chamber in Rich App, who is a retention specialist, attrition and retention specialist for retail space. And then there were some volunteers from the Mobile GR Commission, and I hope that I got all of those right. That's what it was in my notes. And if any of those Mobile GR representatives are no longer willing, or I did get that wrong, we can correct that. But also just to recommend and remind you all that right now a quorum is 5, so you want to make sure to steer clear of that for a working group with your members of the Mobile GR Commission, so you want to be 4 or less.
All right. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I think it would be appropriate to ask for a motion so that you all can discuss on the action, and that'd be great.
Be appropriate. I would entertain a motion. All right. Do we have support?
Second.
All right. Now, any comments or questions? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. That motion carries as well. Next are discussion items. We have parking enforcement overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have Craig, who oversees our parking enforcement for Mobile GR. And today, Craig's goal is to educate and to provide a time for a bit of a discussion around how our protocol for parking enforcement and a little bit of data there. One of the things you'll notice is I have updated the format for how we are presenting metrics to you all in the back of your packet in that Mobile GR updates. And so we'll have different members of staff come and do a similar presentation on their area of expertise. And Craig's going to kick that off and chat through some of those metrics so that you can look forward to how those impact our work and how we make decisions. And so thanks, Craig, so much for being here. Take it away.
Thanks for having me. My name is Craig Hubert, Parking Enforcement Supervisor. There it is. Craig Hubert, Parking Enforcement Supervisor. I've been doing this job for about 3.5 years now, and I'll just get started. We're just gonna do a 101. You can go to the next slide. So who are we? We have 10 full-time positions. They're not always filled, but currently we do have 10 full positions, which is nice. We are 7 days per week, primarily Monday through Friday, but we do have Saturday and Sunday shifts. Again, that's all dependent too on if I have a full staff or not. Our hours of operation, we have kind of 2 different, if you want to think about it that way. There's meter enforcement, which I'm sure you all know is 8 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. And then on Monroe Center, it's 8 to 6 p.m. on Saturday. I would like to have Saturday enforcement for meters across the board. We kind of try and push that every year or so, and it doesn't always work out, but we might get into that later on in the discussion. All other enforcement is 24/7. Now, we're not out there 24/7. That's just not feasible with 10 people. There's safety concerns at night, things like that. But we can enforce 24/7. GRPD will supplement us if we need their assistance. If we get, regular issues after our normal working hours, I can ask them to help me out. And they're very accommodating, which is very nice. We do schedule overtime as needed. We've done it for things like a big concert, maybe at Van Andel Arena, that's going to go later in the evening. And we know, well, you may not know this, but the parking over there can get pretty crazy when they know we're not around. And people will do all sorts of things because they think it's convenient to them. So we do schedule overtime. It's not often that we do it like that. I do have parking officers that are like 1s, 2s, and then I have a lead worker. And we do schedule the 2s, the parking officer 2s, to an overtime schedule every Saturday. It's usually a half day, but it can be longer, just to cover some complaints that we've got that we weren't able to finish from Friday or early Saturday morning, and get that stuff cleared up. Next slide. Did we miss one? There we go. So what is parking enforcement and why does it matter? Obviously parking enforcement is enforcing the parking ordinances. That's number one. So my team is out patrolling either on foot or in a car. And if they're in a metered district or a business district that has paid on-street parking, they're primarily doing that. But while they're doing that, they're also doing safety concerns, no parking zones, fire hydrants, all the normal things you'd think that parking enforcement does. Some of the other things that people may not think about is they're visible to the community. So just their presence can oftentimes kind of drive behavior. People know we're out. They may change their mind about how they're going to park or what decisions they're going to make. So their visibility is good. They're also in uniform, so they're representing the city. People do often go up to them and ask them questions, just parking related or citywide related. And they may not know the answer, but they can at least direct them where to go, 311 or a specific department. They're kind of the first thing people see because they are walking around in our community and in our business districts. And they do provide customer service. So there's a lot of interaction with the public. And some of it's negative, but a lot of it's quite positive. And a lot of it's just questions like, well, why can't I do this? Or where should I go? Or what should I do? And they're very good at being able to explain that. And it's not just a hard line. We're not just going to go and write a ticket. If someone's there, we'll interact with them and engage and have a conversation. It shouldn't just be a penalty. We want to inform as well as enforce. So a couple of the benefits. One that's interesting is you would get ideally, if you have regular and normal enforcement, you'd get a reduction in ticket issuance because behavior should be changing. Now, that's the ideal. It doesn't always happen, and it's dependent on staffing levels and how frequently you can get through areas. But that's the idea. Another one is increased safety. So, we have traffic signals that are, regulating traffic. We have traffic engineering that's kind of deciding how traffic should move. Where we place signs are very important. But another part of that is just enforcement. It allows for traffic to move freely and safely without interference or interruptions. It should create more pedestrian safety because vehicular traffic would be more, I'm trying to think how I would word this, but cognizant of everything around them because they know that they could potentially get a parking ticket. Bikes, scooters, all those other things weigh in on traffic safety. So if we're out there, we're visible, we're enforcing the rules, the idea is that everyone else is complying with them and kind of working together as a community. Another one that's interesting is traffic congestion. So if you've ever gone downtown at night and you're trying to find a parking space on the street, if there's no enforcement, so it's after enforcement hours, it's pretty going to be full. And a lot of times people will just drive in circles until they find an open spot. So that's one, it's not great for the environment because they're just constantly circling, creating more emissions. But it's not really safe. People are walking around, they're going bars, restaurants, and it just creates more chances for problems to happen. Again, I talked about public education. They're interacting constantly with the public, and so that's a big one. So any questions so far? I got a couple diagrams and some numbers I wanted to show you just so you can see what that looks like. So meter enforcement, there's 3,750 on-street paid spaces throughout the city, and that includes all our business districts, not all of them, but most of them. And I have some maps to show you later too. There's 535 pay stations. We finally just converted all our single space meters to basically pay stations where you can pay at the machine, the kiosk, or you use our mobile app to pay. We do have a meter reservation program that's pretty large, allows for construction work to happen, allows for people to move into an apartment. It allows for various services that we want to provide as a city and have vendors come in and do these things. So we do offer a meter reservation program. There's a cost to that. If you would like to know, we can talk about that. The other primary objective is safety violations. These are things like no parking zones, bike lanes, driveways, sidewalks, fire hydrants, crosswalks. Pretty much everything's a safety violation, but these are some of the big ones. I do have some graphs to show you on that too. Things like bike lanes and sidewalks and things like that are kind of tough to enforce because they're usually short term. So people will park in their driveway blocking access to the sidewalk. They're doing that usually quickly and then leaving. So by the time we get to it, it's gone. So the numbers on tickets for that stuff is kind of low. Bike lanes are the same. People are not just parking in bike lanes. It's really quick in and out. And so it's very hard to do targeted enforcement of that. And we can talk about that. Secondary objectives. One are the parking complaints. So when we're talking about parking complaints, we're reacting to the public. We're not actively patrolling the city outside of these designated enforcement zones. So we're responding to the public and enforcing as necessary. Most of that seasonal odd even enforcement, we took that on in fiscal year 22, I believe, July. And police still supplement it a little bit, but they don't really do much anymore. So we're responding to the public on their odd even enforcement. And then we do everything else. If someone's blocking your driveway, we'll come out and ticket. If someone's blocking a fire hydrant, we'll go wherever, any corner of the city. Next slide. So these are just some numbers for central and non-central ticketing, meter ticketing. So downtown, the DDA boundary is the downtown district that we have for central meter enforcement. And then places like Easttown, Creston neighborhood, Fulton, Wealthy, the Burton Heights area. There's some maps we can look at. And you'll notice that obviously central meter enforcement is going to be the biggest one. That's where we're walking routes and we're just enforcing the turnover that we want for businesses and residents. So they account for 66% of all tickets in that time frame since we took over all citywide enforcement. And it fluctuates depending on the year, depending on my staffing levels. Next slide. Some of the money part of this, the budgetary stuff. So our current expenditure is, you can see here, is over $1 million. But we're only getting $435,000 of that in revenue. That's primarily because the general operating fund is where the ticket fine revenue goes. We've taken some of that back over the years when we've changed fine amounts or when we took over seasonal odd even parking, we get all that revenue. But my team, the 10 employees, are all paid out of the parking fund, not the general fund. And so you'll see there's quite a big shortfall in funding for this operation. Does anyone have any questions on this? No. Okay. Next slide. Here's some info on seasonal complaints versus enforcement, and then total complaints versus seasonal complaints. So you'll notice that in fiscal year 22, we had just under 1,000 complaints, but we issued 12,000 seasonal odd even tickets. This trends down. Part of that is, like I talked about before, because the more you do enforcement, the less you should be ticketing, because the community starts to behave according to the rules, so to speak. Part of that's we're being a little more judicious. We could respond to a complaint on a block and just go for the rest of the day, snaking through the neighborhood and doing odd even enforcement. That's not really the mandate is. The mandate's more of target that location that the complaint was based on and move on. And so when I took over, I'm not sure the specifics of how that was being conveyed to the team. And since then, we've kind of changed it and refined it and really said, let's not enforce if these people in this section of the community or the neighborhood or the block don't want it, but these do. I know that can be kind of controversial, but staffing levels and a non, I guess, aggressive or patrol-based system is what we're going towards. So ideally, we don't have a lot of odd even tickets because people are complying. The other thing that played a part in the last 2 fiscal years is our snow has been interesting the last 2 years. 2 years ago, we got big snow, but it was gone within a few days every time. So we get less complaints about that. And then last year, it was kind of similar, but again, it's all kind of dependent on various factors. Yes?
Quick question. Thanks, first of all, Craig, for this. Do complaints mostly come from residents, or are those snow truck drivers and people like that trying to clear the street?
Yeah, it's a mix. It's mostly residents, but yes, it's Public Works. It's the snowplow folks, the refuse drivers, things like that. But the majority are residents. Yeah, there's a lot of repeat residents that like to submit complaints. So I have a few in my head that I'm thinking of. Again, you can see total complaints for seasonal. It's pretty low across the board for percentage-wise. A lot of it is driveways and sidewalks, no parking zones, and these are throughout all the neighborhoods. And as you know, a lot of our neighborhoods are old, and the streets are narrow, and parking's a premium. There's not a lot of driveways, so there's a lot of on-street demand in certain locations. And we try and regulate that as best we can. Did I see your hand? Oh, okay. Next slide. These I'll just go through really quickly. This is fiscal year 25. These are some of the main ones that we get. And you can just kind of see how they break down in terms of how many tickets are issued. You'll see that this current year is mostly no parking zones. It's a big safety issue. They're placed on purpose to create access and create pedestrian safety. You can just keep kind of flipping through real quick. These are just the other fiscal years. You can take a look at these at your leisure. So part of a ticket issuance isn't just we issue a ticket. It goes through a process, and I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with it, but once we issue the ticket, it's kind of out of our realm. I can't do anything with it. I can make a recommendation, but I can't change it. I can't void it. I don't have any authority once that thing is printed by the officer. So once that print button is hit, it's a digital copy is created with the city treasurer, who is allowed through the state of Michigan to create what's called a parking violations bureau within the department. And so all the parking tickets that are issued, whether it's police officer or us, is housed with the city treasurer in the parking violations bureau. And they administer to complaints, questions, disputes. The city treasurer is authorized to void a ticket based on certain circumstances. Part of the reason why there's this kind of middleman between the issuance of a ticket and the district court is just from a volume standpoint. The court would be flooded with parking tickets if they went directly to the district court, like a seatbelt ticket would go directly to the court. So they act as a middleman. and try and manage as best they can any disputes, any questions, any comments. And if a person still wants to dispute it, they can have their day in court and sit in front of a magistrate and explain why they don't think a ticket was issued. And my team will go there and explain why they issued the ticket, and then a decision will be made. So I actually spent years and years working in City Treasurer's office, 15 years between City of Grand Rapids and City of Lansing treasuries. So I kind of operated the Parking Violations Bureau for 7 years here in Grand Rapids, which offered me the opportunity to take over the role at Mobile GR, managing the enforcement staff. Is there any questions? Next slide. So these are just some of our enforcement routes and meter districts. So obviously the big one is downtown. I'm not including the west side because that we kind of use the west side as a different patrol route, but this is the main one. This is where our focus is with most of our staff on this section of the city. Next one. North Monroe. This goes all the way up to Plainfield. Next slide. Here's the west side. We're probably going to see changes here in the next few years. We're going to lose some parking over off of Summer, I believe, and a couple side streets there. Next slide. This is kind of our southeast corridor. So you have Fulton area, you have Cherry, you have Wealthy Street, and then Easttown is another big one. This is another one that I would really like to do Saturday enforcement on. If you've ever been in Easttown on a Saturday, it's quite busy. And I'm sure some of the businesses there would like some turnover. More turnover, I should say. Again, Plainfield, Creston Heights. Next one. And then South Division has a little bit of meter enforcement. Not as much as everywhere else, though. Next one. These are just some heat maps of seasonal odd-even parking. Every year, it's pretty similar. Again, this is all driven by complaint, so you can kind of slide through these real quick. And they vary depending on the year. And that's about it.
Any questions? Thank you for the report.
Yeah, I have a few.
Yes.
So, I mean, you're just mentioning the Saturday enforcement. So what would you say is like the barrier right now to having more Saturday enforcement?
I want Saturday meter enforcement. I guess I wanted to clarify that. We do have Saturday enforcement, not just on Monroe Center. We can do everything else. We just can't do the meters. My understanding, that comes from the city manager.
Okay. And then in terms of like the bike lane and sidewalk parking, you know, this is a big like safety hazard for people who are walking and biking. So I'm wondering if like you have any ideas for how we can do that type of enforcement more effectively instead of just being complaint-based.
From a staffing standpoint, we'd probably have to add staff and vehicles, and then have a discussion on how we would actively do that and how we'd have to identify problem areas versus non-problem areas, and is that fair to do it that way versus just doing all bike lanes. I'd have to have a better understanding of the bike lane system as a whole, including maps and future iterations. But currently, from a staffing standpoint and the short-term nature of bike lane parking, it's difficult. And that's something we can talk about, and we do talk about. But I know it's frustrating because when you ride by, cars there, you put in a report, 10 minutes maybe we can get there if it's a regular day. But let's just say an hour, and they're gone. It's just it's a logistical thing at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Next discussion item,
All right, thanks, Craig. So we also have a project called MODI, and that probably has come up in conversation with us here before. And I've got Colin, who is managing that project. He's going to give you all a brief overview, and then we're going to roll right into the parking investment strategy project overview. But please, this is a nice demo that Colin's going to give you on what we're working on and kind of a timeline for the project. And then we'll talk a little bit more about how this project, this application will be used in the future in the next presentation. Go ahead, Colin.
Hi, Commissioners. Colin Cooper. I use they, him pronouns. I'm the IT Project Systems and Technology Manager for Mobile GR. It's been a couple of years since I've been here to talk to you. I think that there are maybe a few commissioners who were on board when I was here last, but updating you about kind of the same thing. We've had a few different converging projects over the years, specifically around the data that we have and use as a department and how we make our resources available to the public in an accessible way that is system agnostic. So these are two like research areas that I've been involved on since coming into Mobile GR in 2019. We've tried several different iterations for data analysis, for how do we make parking just feel easier to people who are coming into the downtown and business areas. And we've learned a lot through those iterations, but fortunately we've kind of come to an arrangement with a partner organization called MODI. And what they do is they work primarily with cities, but also with universities, things like that, to ingest all data and resource availability into a single platform that runs in a web app. So it's not a dedicated application anyone has to go get from an app store. And that data is all put into basically two different formats. There's an internal format for our use and an external format for customer use. The thing that it gives us is it allows us to feed all of our occupancy and session data from off-street parking lots, parking ramps, as well as session length and general usage of our on-street locations from the Motu app and Flowbird data that we receive from them. It allows us to ETL, clean up that data, bring it all into a centralized repository, and then analyze it so that we can bring better ideas to you folks and we can make better decisions going forward as to how we are making changes to our programs, how we are investing in our spaces. And in the past, that's been a largely manual process. It requires a lot of staff time. The goal is to get to a system where we can do those things live and the data is always there in the format that we need it. The other and probably more exciting, at least from a public perspective, portion of this is the web app for parking that will be available, if all goes well, later this year for customers who are either coming downtown or who are already downtown to be able to pull up on their phone or personal computer. We have I'm not going to call it a demo, but it is a kind of a snapshot of how this will look as we get closer. We'll be able to identify all of our city-owned on and off-street parking, what the general availability is in those locations. So right now we have several different on-street parking zones, for example. Because of the way the data communication works, we'll be able to tell people, hey, if you go to this zone, we currently know that there's 80% session occupancy generally, so you're likely to be able to find a spot, but there may not be a lot of availability. Or if you go down to this zone that's just south of here, perhaps there's more availability and you'll be able to find parking quicker. This kind of leans toward what Craig was talking about, where not only is it an environmental impact over time, but it's also a perception thing, right? Like there's a lot of frustration that we hear from the community about finding parking, even though we know internally that we have lots of parking to offer. It can be difficult to communicate how to get to it, what to expect when you get there. Having a centralized system should allow us, in theory, to make a lot of those interactions easier, communicate better to the community, and hopefully provide a benefit to both us internally and the external partners, businesses and visitors. So I can show you just a little bit. Again, this is in development, so none of this is final state, but essentially when someone selects a parking area or a zone, they'll be able to go in, find a link to where they can, for on-street, use the Motu app or the Motu web app, which is available now. So people can just use a browser to purchase parking on street instead of having to download an app. That's major feedback that we've received. Or directions for how to get to a parking ramp, what to expect when you get there. Are you going to pay at the kiosk? Is there going to be an event vendor there with a handheld? Those sorts of things. And we're hoping to do a soft launch of just the parking portions of that later this summer, early fall, to try and get an idea through ArtPrize of how well it's working, see if there are any adjustments that need to be made. And then by the end of the year, we're hoping to have implemented a variety of other data, including partnerships with our dash buses to at least where the stops are, possibly getting information on like live location using the systems that the Rapid has available, but much of that is still in process, and we'll know more about what that and car share and micromobility integrations will look like later in the year. I'm sure I will be back to tell you more. So does anybody have any questions? I'll do my best to answer what I can.
Not necessarily a question, but a comment. This sounds like a great idea, and I'm really excited to see it in practice as well. I think you hit the nail on the head with customer frustration, basically, of they're trying to park as close as they can. So maybe this will alleviate some of that frustration and, ideally, for me, in an ideal world, prevent us from building more parking downtown and using what we already have more efficiently. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just a question, will it be a little more dynamic to say where I could put in, I'm going to, the garage bar and grill, what's available?
Yeah, so this is built on top of the Google Maps API. Okay. So the final deliverable should have some sort of mapping where you can say, this is the location I want to go to, what are my options close by? Again, that's just not baked in at the moment.
Okay.
If you would like to see a working map, Denver, Colorado is where Modi is based out of, and they have a fully functional map that I can send out to you folks if you would like to look at it.
Okay.
I have a question. Maybe you said this, and if so, I apologize. But will it have like real-time information on like how full the lots are?
So the lots and ramps specifically will be able to have a much more accurate occupancy data, just because from that we're getting ins and outs through the entry and exit kiosks. We won't be able to say there are 3 spaces on the second floor that are available for you, but we'll be able to say there should be something like 40 spaces at this location right now, based on a combination of transient folks who are in there, our monthly passes that are in use where those are reserved. And then the tricky part is with events, because we have event handhelds that allow us to just raise a gate and charge people as they come through. So some of those adjustments are manual, but it's a lot closer than anything we'll have now. So.
And you won't actually pay there, right? You use whatever the site requires you to?
Yeah, no transactions will take place on this site. It will have links out to, like I said, the Motu app for on-street. So you could theoretically say, I know I want to go park in zone 3670. I can just throw that in my phone, before I get there. Obviously, we're not doing that while we're driving. But those options will be available, and we'll be able to link out to other resources as well.
Great. All
Great. Thank you.
So we'll roll right into parking investment strategy.
Great. So thank you all so much for your attention on those updates, and I really appreciate you giving us a moment to provide you some information. So now we'd like to bring you along with a big project that we've undertaken in the department level. So I'd like to introduce Eric Dreyer, who's come from us, from the consultants OHM, and also Max Dillevin. If you remember, Max often will give you an update on the Dash, and Max is serving as assistant project manager on this project. They're going to walk you through an overview of what this project is and where we are today. What I need from the Mobile GR Commission and your role here is to help inform with your input anything that you think might be valuable to the project process. The team here is also going to talk with you about the engagement that we are holding with stakeholders. And for this project, our stakeholders are owners and operators of parking within the DDA boundaries, which they'll show you, they'll remind you what those boundaries are here on a map. And that is what we're looking for, is feedback from those stakeholders. So I'm excited to get your perspective and some input on this project and some thoughts that you may have. So take it away. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for that background, Jess. Again, I'm Max Dillevin, Senior Mobility Planning Analyst here and Assistant Project Manager. Joining me today is Eric Dreyer. Just want to give you kind of a background of our consultant team and our project team at large. So see, we have a contract with OHM. They have a sub-consultant, Stantec, that they're working with. OHM is the lead consultant here, and they'll be leading the project, the engagement, data collection, and we'll be also supporting some of the development of the parking investment strategies that will be included in this final deliverable as part of this effort. Stantec is going to be assisting on the data analysis and providing the development of the specific parking mobility strategies as well. Stantec in particular has delivered a lot of transformative parking and mobility strategies that really integrate kind of the really complex tapestry that involves parking. It's not just storing cars, it's economic development, it's land use, multimodal access, safety, all these things. And this team's proposal really closely aligned with our department's vision, as well as some of the other citywide strategic goals as well. So we really feel excited that we have some national experts here to help assist us on this effort. And then on the Mobile GR team side, this reminds me that we probably need to get some headshots of our folks here. We do have faces, I promise. Jessica here, director, myself, and then also major support from Andrea and Colin as well. So just to go over, we'll give you an overview of this effort's goals and what we hope to accomplish. I'll be handing it off to Eric to really go into some of the existing conditions data that we've collected to this point. We'll be looking at the demand and parking capacity utilization, and we'll wrap it up with where we intend to move from here. So why are we doing this? The parking is this, I'm preaching to the choir, but parking is a very critical part of our city's mobility landscape and our economic development. Parking or cars in general really require a tremendous amount of terminal capacity. That's, when you leave it somewhere. And it requires a significant investment in infrastructure to make that happen. This takes budget, it takes physical space, and these things have to be thought through very, very intently. Our department, as some of you may know who have been on the commission for a while, we've had some adjustments to some of our parking fares and parking rates as well, and I'll get into our parking market competitiveness framework in a little bit. This study is also going to evaluate, compile some of the data for the downtown area. So prior to the last maybe year or so, we've kind of discovered that we don't really have kind of this comprehensive inventory of what's all out there. We know the facilities that we have under the auspices of the city, but parking is always changing in terms of different private owners and how much of that is publicly available, how much of it's restricted. That's constantly changing. We never really had our arms really wrapped around what's all out there. because it's not just the city. Obviously, there are other major players, Ellis and Grand Valley State, and yeah, I could list off tons of organizations that I think when we're looking at this, and Eric will get into it more, but there are over 200 entities that own and operate parking within our DDA boundaries, which is pretty, it makes for a very complex sort of ecosystem here. This study is also going to help us understand our current capacity and demand for parking, but also we want to help try to forecast what that future demand is going to be and help adjust our capacity to meet that demand. And all this to say, we want to make sure these are fiscally sustainable and efficient solutions as possible. So our North Star for this project really is the mobility objective number 4 in the city strategic plan, which says to develop an effective customer responsive parking system. That really hits the nail on the head here. So the parking market competitiveness framework, as I alluded to earlier, that really serves as our kind of our rate setting framework to guide budget decisions and support kind of that long-term health of the parking fund as well. So in this fiscal year 25, there's been updates and adjustments to that framework along with those parking rates. The parking market competitiveness framework calls for the next step to respond to economic development and community needs. So we'll be implementing rate or operational changes in response to changes in the downtown parking landscape. And as I alluded to earlier, the development of these key details, like creating this parking system inventory that's holistic, and also conduct some pretty intentional engagement with those parking system owners and operators outside of just the city. And ultimately, this is gearing us toward implementing the recently adopted community master plan and helping support our TDM, our transportation demand management goals, so on and so forth. So what are we needing to solve with this project? We have kind of some major questions here. I'll just go through these very quickly, but these are really what we're trying to accomplish with this study. So how much parking is needed to support our downtown? And what is needed to ensure that we are fiscally and financially healthy, that we're not overextending our resources that we have available to us? Should we add more parking? Is it needed? And where is that need going to be geographically and temporally? So what times of day, days of week, seasons of the year? And really what we brought in our consultants for is to help us understand some of those strategies that are going to best fit what we have within our capability. I'm going to hand it over to Eric, and he's going to give you just an overview of just some of the information that we've discovered thus far as this project.
Great. All right, raise this up a little bit. Thanks for having me. It's a really exciting project. It's very rare that as a transportation planner, you get to dig into the details about parking and, you know, sort of get in the weeds with something like this. So, as Max explained, we're currently going through this very kind of deep dive into all the parking data that we know. Downtown Grand Rapids did a great job helping pull together all of the facilities that they know of, what those capacities look like, where they're located. And after cleaning all that data up and sort of doing some QA/QC between the team, we've got what we think is a pretty accurate understanding of all of the spaces that are out there. But as we go through this project, we've got to figure out, you know, is this enough for right now? In the future, we know there's a lot of developments happening, and like Max said, where if needed, does new parking need to go? So, what's currently driving demand? That kind of depends on the day, and we're going to show some figures about what generally that looks like. And it depends on the time of the week, but at any given day, any time of week, you could have downtown workers, you got hotel visitors, medical campuses are big drivers of parking, both with employees and visitors, patients, anything like that. The colleges and universities, both staff and students are contributing to this. And then conferences, entertainment, sports events, all of the sort of after-hours types of events that are drawing people into downtown and making it a vibrant place that people want to be. When we look at some of the specific locations, these are kind of shown here on this map here. This isn't everything, obviously, but it's some of the areas where we think people are being drawn to, general vicinities. Van Andel, huge draw on certain times of the week, certain times of the year. GVSU, GRCC, a lot of downtown offices are starting to more and more come back, not only here but around the country. And then places like DeVos Place, the hotels that are surrounding that, your conference crowd, that may be certain times of the week, certain times of the year. And then you have your dining districts, retail districts, and then 10,000 plus and growing residents that live in the DDA. All of those people need places to park. Not all of them, but a vast majority need places to park, and we want to figure out ways to support that, but also, like Max said, be efficient with our parking system moving forward. We know that we don't want to have the entire downtown be paved and full of parking ramps, because then there'd be nothing to do. And we know a little bit about what some of the future demand is going to be. The new stadium over on the west side, the opening next year, the amphitheater, some of the future planned riverfront developments that will likely need to include some parking. And then there's all the little individual infill developments and things that are happening outside of those larger venues that are just going to continue to drive up the demand for mobility and transportation services into downtown, part of that being parking. And as we've started to get into this study, there's been a couple of advancements. Max mentioned a few things that Mobile GR is working on, but there's also the air garage and air park system, which is kind of independently monetizing small spaces. It can say, hey, I own a lot. I charge daily parking for office workers, but after 5 p.m. that thing's empty. I'm going to use this app to try to get people to come in and park there for an event. And then the Modi software, which I think is going to tie very nicely into this project, really understanding the data and having a huge clean data set to be able to manage the parking effectively. I think one of the things that we've run into going through this is there's 7 different systems that are working right now, cleaning that data up, making sure that we can accurately show those things on a map or in a table or in a spreadsheet, has proven to be kind of difficult. And it sounds like Modi's goal is to really make that kind of comprehensive and seamless. So we have quite a bit of capacity. I think we have a majority of capacity data based off of what DGRI has provided, and a good subset of utilization data based off of the what Mobile GR is able to provide us through the lots and ramps that they manage. So this is not full understanding of the entire parking system downtown, but it does give us a snapshot of kind of how things are working and where some of the major capacity locations are at. So we mapped all of them out. This map here kind of shows lowest to highest. Lighter color green is smaller spaces or less capacity. The darker green is higher capacity. There are still a few that we don't quite know exactly how many spaces are there, so there may be a few that are shown as unavailable. But we know generally where these places are located, and if you look at the map, it's a lot of green. It's a lot of locations here on this map. And for the public spaces, we have a good set of utilization data, but we don't quite know what the private operators are seeing from a utilization side. Breaking this into some more zone type of districts here, we took that spreadsheet that we found or took the spreadsheet, added everything up, and found over 49,000 parking spaces. We'll get into a little bit more detail on that, but keep that in mind. 49,000 is kind of the number that we have so far. Of those 49,000, almost 16,000, 15,700 or so are publicly available, meaning anybody who's coming in can park in them for a fee. That includes Ellis, anything that's open to the public for parking, all the city-owned lots, and it also includes our on-street lots. So within this area, we have about 2,500 on-street spaces, and you can see how that's broken down based on the specific kind of zones there. Your core and kind of the east side of the core area have kind of the highest density. When we look at the number of spaces owned by particular entities, this is not everything that we know of. This is only the, I guess, top 33,000. But there's some big blocks there. You got Corewell, City of Grand Rapids, GVSU, GRCC, and Ellis is kind of our top 5. You throw in the Downtown Development Authority, and that rounds out the top 6. So, oops, this doesn't have the other slide that we wanted to show, but I think in the of those top 5, there's about 21,000 spaces, and 9,000-ish plus 2,500, 11,500 are kind of restricted use. That, in our opinion, at just looking at this data right now, kind of provides a big opportunity. That's a pretty big chunk of spaces that you wouldn't have to add things if we could figure out a way to kind of share those spaces. We were able to dive into the data a little bit more, and we're hoping as we go through this study to have even more of this availability and capacity data for a much larger swath of the downtown. But this is based off of the data that Mobile GR collects, so this is all of the locations you see there at the bottom. But when we look at average over the course of 3 months, available spaces for publicly owned lots, it tends to go down starting from Monday to Saturday. So Monday, there's the most available spaces on average. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, things get really are more booked up. And that makes sense. There's people coming downtown, they're going out to dinner, they're going to see a show, whatever they may be. So we start to see that surge at the later part of the week. And we have to think about what that highest amount of use is as we go into the kind of the strategy development. This graph here shows kind of the same sort of data, but over the course of a day. The pink line, or actually the lines here generally show, from 12 a.m. to 2 p.m., things are staying pretty steady. There may be a little bit of turnover, a little bit of addition as people come downtown for work. But that 3 p.m., 4 p.m., all the way to 8, 9 p.m., things start to spike. And depending on the day, those may be different, but this is average over the course of a couple of months for all of these lots. And it's just kind of showing us a trend line here that as we get further along in each day, towards that dinner time frame, parking begins to become harder to find. Thinking about the availability of spaces at some of our key destinations, and we picked 4 different locations, thinking they kind of represented geographically where the demand is kind of highest. But Van Andel, that's your central south portion of downtown. Good proximity to a lot of different parking spaces, and this walk shed analysis that we're showing here takes into account quarter-mile and half-mile walking distances based off the street network and sidewalks. This isn't we're going to drop a point and draw a quarter mile out. It's how far is it going to take me to get from a quarter mile to my destination. So you can see those purple lines there aren't perfectly circular. They kind of ebb and flow, and as you see on some of the other ones, the river plays a big part in limiting people's access to parking in particular. But you can see the difference in between the total publicly available spaces and the total available spaces. So when we look at a quarter mile, there's actually not that much of a difference between the public and total available spaces. But when we look out a half a mile, you start to get into some of the hospital system parking spaces and it almost doubles the amount of capacity. At the new amphitheater, similar kind of story. You can see the river there really playing a barrier to some of the areas on the other side, where there could be, it's a quarter-mile across, but you can't get over there in a quarter-mile walk. We also want to run this, just as an aside, want to run this as a 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk, and see how that might change some of the distances. But again, there's a good number of spaces within a half-a-mile walk, both publicly and privately. But again, there may be the need to think about how we utilize some of those total spaces to supplement the demand in these areas. The new stadium has probably the least amount of capacity, again, because of just the general lack of spaces over in the west side. But then the river playing a big barrier to walkability and having to walk up and around to get to a bridge. Total available spaces, we got 1,200 and a quarter mile, 5,500 or so within a half mile, but not as many public spaces, under 1,000 for both. And then DeVos Place, again, kind of showing the barrier that the river plays here, and pretty similar to the Amway or Van Andel Arena, and but looking more to the north there, and 17,000 or so total spaces within a half-mile walk. Again, getting into the medical mile parking that's out there. Another sort of utilization style of graph. So this shows available spaces by time per day, and this is just a sort of more detailed version of some of the other graphs that we've shown. The pink, blue, and orange there are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, showing that increase in utilization, decrease in available spaces, particularly at the 6 o'clock time frame. So when people are coming to see a show, do downtown things, and really that's kind of the trend that we're seeing is through the week, the end of the week becomes the highest utilized. And then when we look at kind of the hard data itself, this is percentage occupied for all of the publicly owned lots here, and you can see they range from anywhere to 11% occupied on average to 70, 69%. And any particular day that may change. Area 2 on a Friday, 85% occupied. So there's not much capacity there to bring in more people. But Area 9, some of the other lots and ramps have capacity, but people might not know about it. And I think that's where the Modi tool is going to come in to help direct people to where those available spaces are, and try to put a little bit of trip planning into people's minds before they come downtown. And I'm going to turn it back over to Max to talk about engagement.
Yeah, so obviously a crucial element of this study is going to be talking to those folks that own and operate parking, but there's also a number of other stakeholders too. So to ensure that we get that meaningful and comprehensive understanding of the parking landscape, specifically in the downtown, we've outlined kind of 4 key groups here. They're kind of identified based on their legal or jurisdictional authority and relevance to the project's goals and data needs and policy implications as well. And we're kind of tailoring the type of engagement with each of these groups. I'll just run through these individually. We have, most importantly, and that's why I list it last, Mobile GR Commission. Also, our internal staff. It's going to be really important that we get folks specifically from our planning department, economic development, engineering, that these folks are also kind of on board and we're all rowing in the same direction, because each of these entities has a very significant role to play in parking, how much is allowed, what gets funded, incentives for private development. All this plays a major role. We want to make sure that the policies that each individual department are also kind of helping us steer toward these strategies that will be developed as part of this effort. The owners and operators of parking facilities, we're going to be hosting an open house. Well, let me rewind that just real quick. We're going to be doing a lot of one-on-one engagement with those folks initially, just to introduce them to the project, who we are, develop a relationship, requesting some data from them to better understand what they have available, how much, and who it's available to. We're going to be taking kind of the top maybe 20-ish, those entities that own or manage 200 or more parking spaces and having kind of an open house type of event. We're going to be going over a lot of this existing conditions data and trying to better understand where their challenges are and where they might see opportunities for potential partnerships or other strategies that can help kind of alleviate some of the parking crunches that they're experiencing. And one thing I'll say is we've met with a number of these major stakeholders so far, and it's really encouraging to hear that they, really seem to get on board with the idea of this project. They're willing to share their data. And they all kind of see this once we start talking about just how much parking we have in this ecosystem, everybody kind of sees like, oh, we do have a lot of assets. If we can just kind of deploy them and use them more efficiently, or maybe there's some shared use agreement potential, we could really do a lot with not having to make a lot of individual investments on the behalf of every single individual entity. So, yeah, really happy to see that we have entities that are kind of behind us on this effort, and we really look forward to having more in-depth conversations with those folks as the project continues. And we'll be keeping you all up to speed on the progress of this. We've already talked to a few of you individually, but we'll certainly be having those conversations as the summer and fall come on as well. So, where do we go from here? We really need to hone in specifically on the utilization and capacity of the on-street on-street spaces and surface lots. So we've developed a methodology to collect that data. That's going to allow us to see when we have crunches in our on-street parking, what times of day, days of the week. It'll also establish a nice baseline. We'll be collecting this over the course of a number of days so we can get several snapshots in time to understand that behavior. And also hopefully serve as the baseline for future analyses so we can understand summer season on-street parking really increased in the evenings in 1 year versus another, and we can sort of adjust our policies or enforcement as necessary to respond to those changes in parking behavior. As I mentioned, the continued engagement with stakeholders, kind of refining this occupancy to capacity analysis, and once we've completed each of those, then we'll start discussing some draft recommendations. That's getting way ahead of the process here. But our goal is to have some draft recommendations by the end of the calendar year. Obviously, there's a lot of steps in between, but that's more or less the timeline that we're on. I think that's that's it. So I'll turn it back over to Jessica for just any closing remarks she may have.
Thanks, Max, and thanks, Eric. I really appreciate you all going through this, and I really want to hear any thoughts that you all have had. That was a lot of information. A couple of notes I want to make. One, when Max mentioned that we've met with some of you individually, it was not as Mobile GR commissioners, but because of other hats that you wear. I just wanted to point that out. We will be coming to you as a group on any updates for the Mobile GR Commission. The other note is when we talk about availability, total availability in the whole parking system, we're looking at this inventory of all parking, and I think that was clear through the presentation, but I wanted to reiterate that part. And we have been, as Max said, we're really appreciative of the partners that we have in the system. We're looking at this as a system review, and it's been crucial for other parking owners and operators to come to the table and chat with us, and they have been so helpful, and I just want to acknowledge that has been super appreciative, and we're also that we are learning a lot lot about their goals and what they are doing with their parking and why they operate their parking the way that they do. And I want to be respectful of those goals and just make that note that one of the things about other folks who own and operate parking in the system, it's not, their goals may not be the same as what the city's goals are for the parking amenities that we offer to the public. So just keeping that in mind as we talk about that. It looks like there's a lot of parking downtown, right? And there is. 49,000 spaces is a lot. And then looking at the about, a little over 15,000 publicly available ones for those owners and operators in the system who offer publicly available spots, and then also understanding that of those others that are not publicly available, what those parking owners and operators, what their goals are, and having discussions with them has been really enlightening about what we're all trying to do as a community and everyone's kind of piece, role, responsibilities in the parking system. So we don't talk a whole lot about that in this strategy because we're looking towards strategies for publicly available parking. So I appreciate just that detail, and I just wanted to reiterate that. And that is all I had at the end.
Okay, any questions or comments?
I've got a question, Eric. Any peer cities or any kind of benchmark municipalities we should be looking at?
Yeah, in our, we're pulling together an existing conditions memo.
Yeah.
We have a couple of peer cities that have both more parking and less parking. And looking particularly at how much they charge for a monthly pass, how much they charge for on-street parking, try to get a sense of the financial kind of aspects of it, and then see how their events and sort of visitor traffic comes in on average, and how that applies to their overall system. So there's so many different ways around this, and getting a couple of benchmarks from peer cities from the Midwest is kind of what we're looking at. And at our, we can provide an update on what we've learned from that as we get a little bit further in the study.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Max, can you name all 100 operators of, no. In that though, and I was just on the fringe of downtown earlier today at a meeting near a church, and gates, ropes, cones, 200 spaces maybe, I don't know, big lot, completely empty until probably Sunday. Are those people that we're going to be talking to as well, or is that private that we wouldn't?
No, those are definitely the folks that we want to talk to. Churches specifically kind of have their own unique challenges, especially being a nonprofit entity, and sometimes capitalizing on parking assets can sort of put that in jeopardy. And that's just specific just to places of worship in general, since you brought it up. But some of those other entities that have parking that are maybe underutilized different times of the day, those are definitely the folks that we want to get in the room and talk to, because there's potential for partnership and maybe some more efficient use of that space if they're open to it. Yeah.
And that's again where I'd just be curious, what have other cities done to work around that to leverage that?
Yeah, the good news is our partners at Stantec, they do this work all across the country, and particularly a guy named Jason who's on the team. He's kind of a strategic advisor to this group, and he's got ideas from anywhere from California to Massachusetts and anywhere in between. So we're going to certainly be picking his brain as we get further along and have a better understanding of what's out there and how people are using it, so that we can make informed decisions on what those strategies look like.
Thank you.
Other comments? Yes.
Yeah, so I have a number of comments and then some questions. So I was sitting here doing some math and adding up the capacity for all of the attractions that you have listed, and obviously the amphitheater and the soccer stadium are not complete yet, but with all the planned capacity for all of those, it's 39,000 people. If every single one of those spaces was having an event on the same day. And so that's 10,000 below the number of spaces that we have. So, I would say that any conversation of adding parking should only come as the very, very last resort, because today we have enough spaces for everyone who would come to our major attractions right now. And obviously, there'd be more people who are coming for something that's not an event at one of those places, but that still allows for 10,000 more people to show up. So, I think how we can communicate with the stakeholders to really share assets that we have in the city that are very valuable. Like, I understand specifically with hospitals, you maybe don't want that capacity to go to the public, but a lot of even the hospitals and health systems that we have in the city are offices, medical offices, and those are closed after business hours. So how can we leverage that? I've also and forgive me, but I look at data all the time. So your graphs for specifically the parking availability by day, and then the parking, do you have it labeled as utilization of public lots? Your y-axes there are a little misleading because they don't start at 0. And so specifically, you're looking at this parking availability by day, but it changes by 15 to 20 spaces for Monday, which is your highest available, versus Saturday, which is the most. Like, that's not actually that big of a difference, So it's just a little, it's making it look like there's a problem when it doesn't really seem like there's a problem. And the same thing for like the utilization, that changes like plus or minus, 80, even still, like, it's bigger, but it's still not really that much. So, yeah.
This is also a fairly small representative size of the entire system. So I think off the top of my head, it's maybe 2,000 or so spaces that we're looking at. It's just the data that we had available at the moment. As we get more data from the surface lots and on-street capacity utilization collection that we're going to do, we should have a better sense of that scale, and will likely get a lot higher.
Right. I mean, it could be. You never know. But I mean, even just, it's more of a question of how you're presenting the data, because you can present it in a way that makes it look like there's a problem when, as I'm saying, if you were to start the graph at 0, you would say, okay, the parking is flat every day. And then my last comment is, so I know that we want this investment study to be focused on like the stakeholders being the owners and operators of the lots in the city. I would think that it would be good to add stakeholders, including, maybe the Rapid, because utilization of parking and demand for parking does not occur in a vacuum. If we can, even if we have 39,000 people, we don't want 39,000 people driving into downtown. That's a congestion problem, it's a safety problem, it's, environmental problem. So how can we, utilize the other partners in the city that also are driving mobility into the city and helping, get people into the city? How can we utilize their assets too?
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and a key piece of this strategy is transportation demand management strategies. And so we talk a lot about parking because that's the exciting data that we have. That's what we need to kind of wrap our head around. But the recommendations and the strategies that are going to come out of this, there's likely going to be some specific things around where a lot should go or where a deck should go or whatever. But thinking about this from a more sustainable system, transit ridership, bike ped, ride share, anything that's going to supplement that demand for people coming downtown with alternative mobility strategies is going to be a key and frankly, much more cheaper way of doing things.
Yeah, just to follow up on that from the Rapid, and very interested in looking at ways we can, Max is very familiar with this too, coming from the Rapid, about how we can utilize transit for this. I know also Grand Valley Metro Council is getting into TDM strategies as well, so making sure all these partners are involved in these discussions and how we can, but I do, looking at the existing stock and how we can use it more efficiently. That's where we absolutely need to start, and hopefully that takes care of most of it with the other TDM strategies we can lay on top of it.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and there's different kind of tools for different problems, and service that the Rapid offers could really hit the nail on the head in terms of like commuter lots or satellite parking facilities. And they already have some of those like in Standale and at 60th Street outside the city of Grand Rapids. And those are key elements. And then there's also the Dash, for instance. So it's okay to park maybe a mile away from the soccer stadium or the amphitheater and just take a shuttle. When I was meeting with Rick and some of his colleagues at AHC, I like to quote this Donald Shoup. He's kind of the godfather of parking. There's a statistic that he was able to calculate when he was looking at parking in downtown LA. And I believe it was around like 25 to 33% of VMTs, vehicle miles traveled, in this one particular like district of downtown LA was mostly folks with the purpose of driving around with the purpose of trying to find a parking space. So these aren't even, that's the least productive travel that you can think of when you're just sort of circling around a block hoping that a on-street space or a space in the ramp opens up. So those types of trips are kind of maybe I wouldn't say the easiest, but would be a huge kind of wedge of that pie to offset those onto some other modes as well.
All right.
One more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Rick. I agree with a lot of what Laura said. I think there could be better representation of data, more, I guess, I like the access being at 0. I think that's a very real way to present the data. Obviously, it might not show anything, but again, it's data. So I think in the parking near key destinations part of the slideshow, I would love to see what we have in terms of getting around other than walking, namely the Dash. I mean, I equate that as akin to walking because it's free. There's very little barrier to entry to that. Obviously, this is just about parking, but I think when you're invoking walking, you should invoke other ways of getting around downtown as well. Might provide a better picture.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great comment.
Anything else? I'll try to land this plane. Just what comes to mind, it looks like you are putting a group together. I think it might be good if there's commissioners that are willing to serve on that group as well. That might be, or maybe that's what your intent is here when you say Mobile JIRA Commission. The other thing, DGRI is updating the GR Forward plan at the same time. So I think I'm glad to see you've got them included, but since that's an investment strategy as well, I do think that these two plans should coalesce in some way and not be done in vacuums. So I would encourage us to figure out how that could happen.
I'm glad you brought that up. The DGRI, or the GR Forward plan that took place about 10 years ago, that DGRI is currently in the process of getting ready to update. Buried down in that plan in Appendix 4 was the mobility and parking study, and this is our effort to update that data that was in that study. And we've been working closely with DGRI to make sure that we're, not doing like duplicative efforts, and also that we're not kind of like running two simultaneous processes that don't have, that aren't in concert. So we're working closely with their staff here at the city and the city planning department to make sure that we're all coordinating together. And so hopefully this information is something that DGRI can use when they're making some, updates to the plan as well.
Okay. Yes, Josh.
Sorry to jump on. And maybe you've already talked with them, but I think it'd be important to connect with the Housing Next team on some of the corridor investment strategy and the importance of district parking centralized, so that as residential development does happen, it doesn't each need to include parking structures, so we can use better space of the land.
Thank you, and I'm never ahead of you guys, so I love this. But Parking Next is, I'm sorry, Parking Next. That's a terrible idea. But Housing Next is a key part of the work that was done here at the city in some housing zoning work and things. And because they work so closely with our planning team, that internal staff team includes our planning department, and they're bringing us right along on the outcomes of that. So thank you very much for bringing that up.
Can I add one more thing?
Obviously.
Sorry, long time watcher, first time caller.
Hi, Adam.
One of the things I'm curious about, this is less about like the numerical management of spaces and more the culture surrounding. I'm wondering about how other communities, I'm thinking about like if you were to go to a sports, like a football match, it's like the whole surrounding neighborhood becomes essentially like an extended social zone. And so where are there other economic development or cultural strategies for saying like, how do we soften that demand curve or see folks come early and then walking to the stadium or whatever the central place becomes part of the experience?
Thanks, Adam. So speaking around, I think that really wraps around our transformational projects that are coming downtown, right? And the culture that's associated with that. I get the question all the time, what are you going to do? What are you going to do, Jess? And so when it comes to managing the experience, the parking experience that folks are having and their travel experience, not just with parking, but also with other modes and how we get around downtown in those, with those transformational projects. This data is really key to help me know what's out there so that we can, as a mobile GR, we can provide information that is helpful to making decisions. So that's where we're at here on this effort, and it's a great question. It's one that I am attempting to find some good information to make good professional recommendations. So I appreciate you asking.
Anything else? All right. Well, it's a great project. Next are updates.
All right, before I hop into the new format, I want to bring Jennifer Casper up. Jennifer has an announcement she would like to make, and she would just like to speak with you all for a quick minute. And Jennifer, I'll let you kick this one off.
Hello, all. For our new commissioner, I'm currently one of the assistant directors for Mobile GR. Last year, I served in the capacity prior to Jessica joining as the interim director, and I got to lead these meetings monthly. So I'm here to announce that last week I notified the city that my tenure here at the city is coming to an end. I've been at the city since October of 2016. I've presented all the time at Mobile GR. I've presented to many of you, even when I wasn't as the interim, many times over the years. I will graciously continue to accept the badge of having brought in the largest public commenter attendance for a meeting. But I've so much enjoyed my time here. I've learned so much. I will still be in the area, and I hope to continue to work or run into any of you out in the wild after I leave. Tomorrow will be my last working day at the city, and then I'll burn off some paid time off and officially be off the books on the 20th. So I am on LinkedIn. If you'd like to connect, feel free to do so. And thank you for all of the wonderful years.
Well, we should say thank you. It's bittersweet. We're sorry to see you go, but we wish you the best. And indeed, I will always remember your badge of honor personally. But I think, you've done an amazing job, particularly as interim director. That was not an easy thing because you had other hats to wear as well. So we appreciate all your service and really good luck. Stay in touch.
And now I get to be a public commenter, so watch
All right.
out. No, I'm just kidding. Thanks again.
All right.
Thanks, Jennifer. And I just want to add that Jennifer, as she mentioned, she's been a dedicated member of the Mobile GR team for over 8 years and has really had a huge impact on our department, our operations, and the community. It's really been significant. We're really grateful for her years of service here at the city, and we really wish her all the best going forward. So thank you, Jennifer. Okay. So last but not least, and I'm going to get you all out of here in just a few minutes over our agreed upon 90 minutes. I want to point out that I've done a few updates based on your input and a couple of ideas I had to your Mobile GR updates in the back of your packet. What I'm doing, and this is a work in progress, but what I'm doing is I am tying everything that we're doing back to the city strategic plan and our goals for mobility. So the city mobility goal is innovative, efficient, low carbon, and equitable mobility solutions that are safe, affordable, and convenient to the community. That aspirational goal is hefty, but I'm going to take it on, okay, with all of you. So we have 4 objectives that are listed in the strategic plan. And that strategic plan, I've kind of named them based on the objective description, and that's in your packet. And the first objective is proactive traffic safety. Objective 2, 21st century multimodal mobility. Objective 3, transportation network development. Objective 4, effective and customer responsive parking system. So that is what's guiding our work here at Mobile GR, and I wanted to share all of that with you. I've got lots more graphs, lots more charts for you all. I look forward to a bigger discussion on this format because we're a little bit short on time today. Thank you all for your attention, and I look forward to having more conversations in the future. Chair?
Okay. Next actually is public comment. Jennifer, if you'd like to come back up. Or if there are other members of the audience that would like to step forward, now is your time. Yes.
Hi, my name is Brian DeVries. I would like to just say.
Can I get you to push your button?
Oh,
That'll help
I
us
see.
out. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian DeVries. I'm a resident of the Second Ward. I'd just like to say thank you for the presentation. It was great. I was thinking the other day when I was driving downtown trying to find parking for an event, though, that we're kind of lacking on some even very simple technology, having like very effective signage telling me as a member of the public what is public parking. If about only 1/3 of the available spots downtown is actually public, it's difficult to do the driving, not to hit people, at the same time as trying to find where are these lots and may I park in them. So it's very hard to see in that environment, and I think it'd be a very simple solution to just have a consistent, visible signage throughout the city, things like that. I also noticed you have no data whatsoever on bike parking within the city, which I found a little bit disappointing, because it is one of the major goals of the plan coming up, is to get more alternative transport into the city. Last comment is anything you can do to support the buses, I really appreciate. That's the kind of mobility that is really excellent to keep the downtown vibrant, to bring people in and out with the least amount of space and the least number of cars possible. And then like the Dash is great. Any coordination you can do with the Rapid is excellent. And I know this meeting was mostly about parking, so it's kind of the opposite, but thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else like to come up and speak? All right, seeing none. Any board or commissioner member comments before we adjourn? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.